a day, 365 days a year.
Assalamu alaikum. This is your very own Dr Shabina Asad Qayyum for Salam Radio and the Body, Health and Mind show. Today on Salam Radio at 7 p.m. Well, it's been a while since I've come back, and I've rather sort of been reflecting on the fact that I've been doing these disappearing acts, haven't I? And it's been good in a way because I have been able to see some of the wonderful shows that have been broadcasted on Salam Radio. We've got a wonderful range of shows. We've got the show that is by Snow, which is in a diverse language as well. And we have Ansar Ali's show as well that has been added to the mix. And we have a recent show on Thursday by Dr Ruqayya Zafar and Madhya Jaral as well, which has been absolutely wonderful. So we've got some great shows, and that's given me the opportunity to have a look and see some of the great work that Salam Radio is promoting into the community. Well, it's a delight to be back. It always is. I do apologize for missing out sometimes, but there are the commitments of work and the other roles that I have, and that is why I haven't been able to broadcast my show. Apologies. And today I've come back because I want to bring to you those shows that I feel are informative and that are useful to us as a Muslim community. So how have you all been? We've had some hot spells, no doubt, as well during the last couple of weeks with this glorious weather. And I will call it glorious because when it's cold, human nature is to be rather ungrateful, isn't it? So when it's cold, I usually complain. And when it's hot, I usually think, well, if I end up complaining about it, then an individual is never happy, and we've got to be happy. Life is too short, I often say. So my name is Dr Shabina Asad Qayyum. I'm a GP in the city of Peterborough. I also work at what I claim to be the best surgery on the planet, which is Central Medical Centre. I love working there. I love my role as a GP and what I do, and speaking to my patients every day. And it's a delight to be in touch with you. But what I'd like is for you to join in and be a bit interactive. Make this show work. Make it your show. It's always been your show. You know this. And I'm always guided by what you say as the listeners you'd like to hear. And I'm going to give you the background to why I chose this show. There's a very important reason. I'm going to give somebody the credit for it. But before that, what we're going to do is I'm going to give you the details if you'd like to get in touch, and that is to call me on 01733 602 133. Come on, guys, pick up those phones and speak to me today about this very important topic that I'm going to be bringing to you. Or you can text me on 07411191062. You can also comment on the live stream on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, or Twitch. And I would love for you to interact. And the reason why is because I need you to interact with me on this show. And what is this show going to be about? Now, often I was reflecting upon my show, which is predominantly medical and clinically related, but so much of my work is involved in looking after the psychosocial aspects as well. And there is a lot that I see in my everyday life where, as a GP, whereby I will deal with emotional well-being problems and mental health problems as well. And we've spoken about that, and we've done a lot, conducted and delivered a lot of shows about that. So I was sitting with our station manager, Asim, and I am going to give him credit for this. I'm going to give him a shout out because he does an absolutely wonderful job. He really does. He supports all of us presenters. And I said, I really want to bring something different in the way of a topic to the community, because I want our community to feel involved. I want them to feel engaged. What would be the best topic to bring to the airways for this week's Body, Health and Mind show? And Asim said, do you know, sister, we've had a lot of deaths in the community, and we've had some young deaths in the community. And often, because we've had these large spate of deaths, and during COVID as well, it's been difficult for people to either approach somebody who's lost a loved one, or for people to understand how they deal with their pain. And I think that that's a really good idea. So I said, I think that's a fabulous idea, that we should really be conducting a show on bereavement and on grief and on loss and on the biggest reality of life, which is death. And we're always taught in our religion to prepare for the certainty, not the uncertainty, but the certainty of death, but also the unpredictability when we will face it, because nobody knows when their time will come. So there are two dilemmas here to deal with. One is facing that loss, and the other is the unpredictability of when that time will come. And that's what I want to talk about today. And it's surprising, but I get ever so many patients who approach me because they're suffering the repercussions of their loss. They've lost a loved one, or it's affected them, or they're approaching the anniversary of somebody that they may have lost. And it's really important that we know and understand how to deal with it. So I'm going to speak about it. I'd like you to give me your comments as well on how you have, give me your ideas. Have you dealt with loss? How do you support somebody who has suffered from loss? And I think we're blessed as a Muslim community. We really are, because we have, both religiously and culturally as well, we tend to have larger supportive social circles, especially by virtue of our mosques in the community and the wonderful work that the mosques do to bring people together. And there is always that psychological support and feeling of togetherness and sharing your grief and the feelings that your body and a family and the processes that they are going through whilst dealing with grief are. But sometimes, and nobody ever tells you how to do it, but sometimes it just feels a little bit more able, you can say. An individual feels more able to deal with things if they know what to expect. And it's a generic piece of information. It's not a one-size-fits-all show. Definitely, different individuals will go through different processes and they will have different thresholds, but it is important to talk about the processes that generally one can expect when losing a loved one and how to approach someone who has lost a loved one. So without further ado, we are going to talk about it. And again, I'm going to repeat the numbers. So give me a call on 01733 602 133. Text me, send me some comments. I'd really like to know how you're feeling with reference to this show. How have you dealt with coping with the loss of someone? Have you dealt with it? Have you supported someone? I want to know. Do share it with me. It would be wonderful to hear your point of view. So, when someone dies, like I said, that it affects everybody differently as well. And death can take place in various forms. You can have people who are subjected to a sudden death, and you can have those individuals who are subjected to death that is expected as well. So what is it that we actually do? And there are a range of resources on the internet that you can tap into. So you've got the Marie Curie Foundation that I think would be a very good thing to go through if you want to get some support. And I can see we've got some comments here as well. You always give good advice, Lee Taylor. Thank you very much. It's good to see you join the show. And I've had to deal with 3 deaths this year already, but I know I've had the time to grieve because of busy life. So that's another thing as well. Sometimes life catches up on you so much with your responsibilities that it is difficult, really, for you to be able to have time for yourself to grieve, you know. So I'd really like for us to, you know, think about how we can deal with these different processes too. So having a look at the physical changes that an individual goes through when they're suffering from bereavement. So what is the initial reaction that an individual goes through? What is the initial reaction? Now, generally, it's really impossible for anybody to predict how they're going to react when they lose a loved one as well, or somebody that they care about. Some people go into shock. Some may feel very numb as well. They may feel disbelief and that what's happened isn't real. People might carry on or try to carry on, just as Lee has said. And here I can see Brother Faisal too, and his comment, and thank you very much for that comment. It's wonderful to be back as well, and I hope to continue because of my busy schedule, but I really do. This is my happy place, and I love being in touch with the community and talking about the things that really matter to us. So thank you, Brother Faisal. It's a pleasure. It's a pleasure to be part of the Salam Radio family. So going back to how an individual feels, there are a range of feelings, from feeling shocked, feeling numb. And if you are an individual who is alone, you could ask family or friends or even a spiritual or a religious leader to come and support you, or you could go to them as well. And I will give you the resource of some of those charities and organizations that can give help as well. Grief isn't just one feeling, you know. It's a range of feelings, and there are many emotions that follow on from one another, and it's very overwhelming. Some people can find that their moods change very, very quickly and feel different in different situations. And people who are bereaved sometimes say they feel up and down. So that's generally what the consensus is as well. And there's the aspect of feeling anxious, agitated, exhausted, guilty, angry, calm as well, feeling resentful. Why me? Why not the criminal? Or why not so-and-so person? Why me? Why is it that this had to happen to me? These are all thoughts that have been articulated to me in my role as a doctor when I've spoken to various people who have been infected by losing a loved one. And it is natural. And it is okay to feel it. Never feel guilty about feeling upset. Because I get an awful lot of patients who say to me when they're crying down the phone, I'm sorry. And you've no need to be sorry, because this is a natural emotion that you will feel. And the other thing is the lack of focus and concentration that many people feel as well as a result of being bereaved. And it's also common for people to swing between feeling okay one moment, and observers might feel that, oh, well, this person has just lost a loved one, to, again, feeling quite down, distressed and hopeless. But this can be unpredictable. This is all part of the grieving process. A lot of people ask me, how long does the grieving process last for? And there is no answer to this. Everybody's body goes through a process of feeling how they are after losing a loved one, which can take from anywhere to between months all the way to years. And gradually, people find that their feelings of grief aren't there all the time, and they're not as difficult to cope with as time goes on. But at other times, feelings might be stronger, and that's more so apparent at occasions like anniversaries and birthdays, and in certain places that remind you of that individual as well. There are also a proportion of people that find that their feelings of grief actually don't lessen, and they find it difficult to manage their daily activities. They might struggle to go to work, they might struggle to look after their children or socialize with friends. And that is when I say, if you feel that it is detrimentally affecting your quality of life, even after a couple of months of losing a loved one, do get in touch with your GP, because there are resources there to help you as well. And Also, there are lots of different helplines as well, and I'll give you the names of some of those helplines later on in the show as well. Now, if you're feeling upset, but a close family member of yours doesn't feel the same as you, it's very easy to think that they don't care or that other people don't care. But always remember that grief is different for everyone, and people process grief in different ways as well. So keep that in mind. When you're thinking about your loved one, the reality is, isn't it, that it feels as if your life has stopped, and that you may want to find ways of treasuring your relationship with a person, even though they're no longer physically present with you. Looking at photos or writing down your memories may help, but there are those proportion of people that think that that's more painful. But talking about your loved one with other people who knew them well is also a source of comfort. And that is why the bereaved families, especially in the Muslim community, when you have a gathering for at least 3 days, people come together and they remember the individual who has passed away. And that is also a source of comfort. But one thing is that when people depart and go to their own homes, that is when reality also kicks in. And it is that time that people need the most support. So it is important to register how you're feeling, because your feelings of grief won't go away in just those 3 days. Your sense of isolation may become greater after those 3 days. And that's why my piece of advice for those individuals who are close to somebody who has had a loss is try to make an effort to keep in touch, even after 3 days, because it's going to be incredibly difficult for people to cope on their own when they lose a loved one as well. There are lots of ways to get support, especially from your GP as well, but it depends upon what your level of support is. There are lots of people that don't like going into groups and talking about their grief and feelings. But if you have somebody who has had an expected death, for example, there are bereavement support services, again, by the Macmillan support, and also by the Marie Curie support line as well. And there are also volunteers from these organisations that can offer up to 6 sessions of support in the form of a weekly phone call as well. So that all is available on the website as well. So I'm going to be a little bit more clinical now with reference to the physical symptoms that an individual can feel. And I get a lot of patients that sometimes present with me with these physical symptoms thinking that something's clinically wrong with them, when actually it is a part of their bereavement process. So some of the things that patients present to me for are having a hollow feeling in the stomach and sometimes abdominal pain as well, tightness in their chest and in their throat, which are all symptoms of anxiety. Some people have an oversensitivity to noise because they are so sensitive all over, and their feelings are sensitive, that their thresholds become very, very low to any stimulus that they can hear. So oversensitivity to noise is another one as well. Difficulty in breathing or hyperventilating is another. Feeling very tired and weak, having a lack of energy, having a dry mouth, an increase or decrease in appetite, having sleep problems as well, and having aches and pains, because there is often a lack of sleep and because there is so much going on in an individual's life that feelings and emotions can be so overwhelming that they can affect you physically as well. Now, it is always good to check up these symptoms, if they persist, by speaking to your GP or a healthcare professional. But other than that, the emotions that you feel alongside that are important to register too. So don't ignore your emotions because you're feeling physical symptoms as well. And I think that it's incredibly important to try and register how you are feeling. Now, it's all well and good. Your body's going through this rush of physical symptoms and your mind is going through a state of emotion. But how can you actually look after yourself when you're grieving and you've lost someone? And my first piece of advice to anybody is I listen to them. I don't interrupt them. I don't ask them questions about the details of the death or how it took place, because I allow them that space. I want them to feel registered and I want them to feel heard. I think it's incredibly important. So if you are somebody who's listening to someone who has lost a loved one, listen to them. Make them feel heard. Make them feel validated. And after, they will usually give you the details of what happened to their loved one, how they lost their life and what impact it's had on them. There will be a lot of crying involved as well. Be there to support them. But one of the first pieces of advice that I give to anybody that's suffered a loss is, please forgive yourself a little. And I say that with a lot of people who suffer from mental health problems as well. Please forgive yourself. Forgive your mind. Forgive your body, because you're carrying a ton of weight that is incredibly difficult for you to shoulder and bear alone. So please forgive yourself as well, because grief can affect your life in many different ways, especially after burying a loved one or having a funeral. Everybody else surrounding you, their lives seem to go back to normal. And often you're left with how you're going to cope. So small things like even managing to eat and sleep, or going to work and university, or socializing with people, come across as very difficult as well. And there isn't any one single solution. So taking care of yourself in particular ways can be very helpful. So if, for example, you've lost your appetite when you've lost somebody, do try to eat little and often rather than having whole meals, and that could compensate a little bit. And your appetite might actually return once your body and mind has gone through the process of grieving as well. Other people, on the other hand, flip the other way and start to crave unhealthy foods as well, or not feel like cooking at all. And if you are somebody that is supporting somebody who has gone through loss, do offer to cook for them as well. The good thing about eating healthy and eating little and often is at least you will keep a level of your energy to cope physically for the things that need to be done for yourself. So try to eat little and often, and try to eat as healthily as possible as well, because those things will help you in the long run. Much as your desire to do so won't be there, but it's important that you do. Sleeping is probably one of the biggest problems that I face when I am talking to a patient who has suffered a bereavement or lost a loved one. And the emotional stress of grief can make you feel incredibly tired. Sometimes it's okay to be given a short course of something. However, doing a little bit of activity during the day, avoiding caffeine, going to bed the same time each night will help you fall asleep eventually. And because people who are suffering from bereavement are kept awake at night thinking about their loved one, being able to talk about your thoughts and feelings can also help. So try to make a regular phone call with a loved one before you go to bed, so that you have taken or shared the burden slightly with someone as well. And there are some really good mindfulness programs. There is an app that I want to share with you all. It's called Smiling Mind, and I give it to a lot of my patients as well. And Smiling Mind is a really good app. It's completely free. It takes you through a questionnaire of what your age, your circumstances are, why you're using the app. And it also has some activities that help you wind down, breathing techniques to help you go to sleep as well. So there are some sleep programs on that. And I would suggest highly that you look at Smiling Mind app and use that if you're really having trouble falling asleep. And you can also Google sleep hygiene techniques as well. Well, we are coming to a break. And what I want to do after the break is talk about a bit more sensitive topics like losing a child, for example, and how we cope and how you support somebody constructively who is going through grief, because often you don't know how to support someone who is going through grief to that extent, or you don't know what to say to somebody who has lost a loved one. So we're going to look at all of that after the break. In the meantime, stay with me where I will join you after the break on the Body, Health and Mind Show.
Stay tuned to Salam Radio after this short ad break.
Peterborough Eats is your new local food ordering platform. Order through Peterborough Eats and not only save money with exclusive deals and discounts, also save your takeaway money too, with our commission being up to 50% cheaper than other well-known platforms. Each order through Peterborough Eats also helps us reinvest back into our community. Find our app on Google and Apple stores or visit peterborough-eats.co.uk. Why not order today?
Asia Restaurant gives you the unique fusion of flavours from Turkey, Iraq, Syria and Iran. Our shish kebabs are grilled on a charcoal barbecue for that authentic taste. Lamb shanks, fresh shawarma, chili kebab, lamb shish, grilled chicken, freshly made baklava and so much more. Eat in or order through Peterborough Eats or Peterborough Grab. Asia Restaurant, 5 Fitzwilliam Street, Peterborough, PE1 2RU. Call us on 01733 562 530. Great prices, great quality. Why not come and find out for yourself? Asia Restaurant, the true taste of the Middle East.
Are you looking for a career where you can make a difference? At Cross Keys Homes, we work with our local communities to create opportunities that change lives. We're looking for enthusiastic, talented people to join our team, from apprenticeships to senior management positions. Cross Keys Homes can support your development while you enjoy great employee benefits. There are so many opportunities for you to shine. Apply to join the Cross Keys Homes team at crosskeyshomes.co.uk.
HS Lawyers make it so simple. Contact Majid Sarwar or Asad Arif today for any matters relating to immigration, family, business or property. Google HS Lawyers to see why we're the highest reviewed firm in Peterborough, with over 500 testimonies on our honesty, speed and excellent communication, making your legal matter simple, easy and stress-free. Contact us today on 01733 703 978. That's 01733 703 978, or email us at peterborough@hs-lawyers.co.uk. HS Lawyers, built on values of integrity and respect, with offices in Peterborough and throughout the West Midlands.
Mar food store Lincoln Road Triangle te inna rush o balle hoy tusani amba ne pure mulke vich rolle
Pakistani sogatan di amba le lo jamnu le lo Pakistani taze mithe amba te jamnu aa gaye ji
ਯਕੀਨ ਕਰੋ ਜੀ ਭਾਈ ਨਾ ਮਾਰ ਫੂਡ ਸਟੋਰ ਵਾਲੇ ਕਿੰਨੇ ਵਰਿਆਂ ਤੋਂ ਸਾਨੂੰ ਪਾਕਿਸਤਾਨ ਤੋਂ ਆਪਣੀ ਬ੍ਰਾਂਡ ਦਾ ਅੰਬ ਮੰਗਵਾ ਕੇ ਪੂਰੇ ਯੂਕੇ ਨੂੰ ਨਸ਼ ਲਵਾਉਂਦੇ ਆ ਤੇ ਹੁਣ ਪਾਕਿਸਤਾਨੀ ਜਾਮਣੂ ਵੀ ਭਾਈ ਉਹ ਜਨੇ ਨੇ ਆ ਪੁੱਤਰ
Amar Food Stores, Al Mashu, fresh halal meat and groceries. Address 613B, Lincoln Road, Triangle, Peterborough. Telephone 01733 687374. Amar Food Stores, Meyar ka naam, Munasib Daam.
listening to Peterborough's community radio, Salam Radio. Salam Radio. 106.2 FM.
Assalamu alaikum. Welcome back. Wonderful to be back as usual. And before the break, we were talking about a topic that it's quite serious. It's about bereavement. And I think this was a long time coming. It's one of those topics. Death isn't something that people like to talk about. And I'm going to tell you a story before I answer Lee's question, who's listening. I worked at a palliative care hospice as part of my training to become a GP, and this was in Kettering. And I didn't know what palliative care was. Throughout my whole medical career after qualifying as a doctor, I'd worked in accident and emergency. I was an ear, nose, throat surgeon, so very fast-paced specialities. Palliative care, I didn't know what it actually involved in the way of working to treat people who were palliative. On my first day, I went in there as a trainee GP who needed experience of palliative care, and I can tell you that it's very important for GPs to have knowledge of how to look after those patients who are deemed to be end of life. And the whole understanding and perspective around an individual and the fact that patients went there because they were at the end of their life, and to have honest and frank conversations with families so that they knew what to expect was very, very important. And it took me a while to get to grips with it. There was no easy way, and in fact there never is an easy way to break that news to a family that they don't have long with a loved one. So death is something that should be talked about, and it should be discussed, because without doing so we will never tap into those emotions or feelings. And you know, children react completely differently to the way adults do, and that's why we're going to talk about that as well. But I do have a question from Lee Taylor. Why do we just cry for no reason? Now, Lee, that is a really good question. If we were to talk about it in the context of bereavement and losing a loved one, crying in general, especially when you've lost a loved one, or even at other times when you're feeling sad or you're faced with a negative situation that makes you feel down, it is the body's way to reduce stress and soothe itself. It's the overspilling of emotion, really, isn't it? And that's why people will cry sometimes when faced with that uncertainty. And a lot of crying is also out of uncertainty, out of fear, out of helplessness, and because a lot of people just want to be validated and want their pain to be registered. So that's why a lot of people cry for no reason, because they feel helpless about their situation as well. And when we talk about crying in the context of death, it is a perfectly normal reaction to cry when somebody has died. It doesn't matter whether that crying takes place for days, weeks, or months, or even years after the death. If you feel like crying, try not to question why you're crying, but allow your emotions to flow. That's very important. And I hope that sort of answered your question as well, Lee. But crying too much as well, how much is too much? When you feel that your crying is getting in the way of you being able to perform normal activities, that is when it's important that, and if it goes on for a considerable period of time, for more than a few weeks, then I think you need to seek help and advice from your doctor as well. So think about that in terms of, you know, how how to manage your feelings. Now, it's also important about speaking about losing a child as well. And there is no greater pain than losing a child. I mean, we're seeing on the media now some really big news stories about parents trying to fight for their child who's on life support in the UK. And this, I wouldn't wish that circumstance on anyone at all. And this is probably one of the most painful processes emotionally that an individual can go through when they lose a child. And it often feels that when you lose a child, you are alone, and that can make dealing with this particular type of grief even more difficult as well. Sometimes one can take a little bit of solace or comfort in the fact that many others have also been affected as well. And if you look at the statistics, we look at babies, for example. 6 babies die every day in the UK in the first few precious weeks of their lives. And older children are lost through accidents, through conditions that they may be born with, and through cancer as well, so underlying medical conditions. Each child is different, and each loss associated with the death of that child is different, but all are equally unique and treasured as well. And there's a lot that you can try and gain comfort from in the way of counselling services. So locally, we've got the Lantern Initiative, who do some great work on emotional well-being and support. So they do some wonderful programs to help support people who are suffering from emotional repercussions of having an event in their life that is pulling them down as well. And also, if you look at our Holy Prophet, peace be upon him, he suffered many losses in his lifetime as well. And this is just me touching upon someone who has lost a child, you know. There's often not much that we can do when you see that children are dying. It's a helpless situation. There's no right way of doing so. Just be there for that individual and make sure that you are giving them a lot of TLC. That's the best way to describe it. Comfort them. Comfort and comfort them time and again. Now, in the same way, it's important to address children that are going through loss. Like I said at the beginning of the show, children don't react in the same way that adults do. So how is it that children react? What do they do when they've lost somebody? Children and young people have a limited ability to put their feelings and thoughts into words and tend to show feelings with their emotions rather than words. And reactions can vary amongst children greatly as they absorb and process information in different ways and at different ages as well. Now, a lot of behaviours that are apparent are when children have a very heightened ability to pick up on any tension and distress that is within that household as well, especially in adults. And they may mirror this in their own behaviour too. And even babies sense that something important when you've lost a loved one is missing, and they may cry more than usual as well. And this can all add to an adult's stress and anxiety too. And children of all ages might feel a little bit more clingy, they might feel a little bit more unsettled. So always do tap in to any changes of behaviour and try your best. It's very difficult not to be calm when you know that you're going through so much distress yourself, and also you have a small child or a baby who is crying too. So for those of you who are supporting somebody who is bereaved and has a small child, try and help them with looking after that child, because that individual needs their space to grieve as well. I've also been faced with children that don't react at all when losing a loved one. And it's generally thought that under the age of 6, children don't understand that death is permanent, and they cannot handle strong emotions for a very long period, and may jump quickly in and out of bed when they're told that someone in their life or someone important has died. Some children might look blank and can then go on to say, can I go and play with my toys? Or what are we going to have for dinner? And they're not able to process what death actually means. So children under the age of 6 usually don't have an understanding that death is permanent, okay? They may understand what death is, but they don't understand that death is permanent. And later, they may react with sudden crying outbursts and change in behaviours, or asking questions about the person that has died or the individual that has died as well. Children may ask repeatedly, when is the so-and-so individual coming back? When is that person coming? When is daddy coming back? When is mummy coming back? When is nanny coming back? When is granddad coming back? Or where has he or she gone? Even though they've been told clearly what happened. And they might play games, like they're looking for that lost person. So explaining clearly to children that someone has died may help as well. And a lot of children I've also seen play games that are synonymous with acting out the death of individuals, so be wary of that, but don't be worried about it, because that is a normal grief reaction on behalf of a child as well. We must never forget that when a child loses somebody, their sense of safety and security is completely shaken up. They might not want to leave you. Register that and be there for them. They may behave as though they're younger. They might be very tearful. They might have temper flare-ups. They might develop habits such as sucking their thumb, for example, or being reluctant to do things when they used to do with confidence. And the other thing is wetting the bed. So try to keep with normal routines with such children that can help them feel safe and keep them informed about plans for the days ahead. Tell them who will take them to school and activities, and also make sure that when you drop your child off to school, they know that you are going to pick them up and at what time, and try to adhere to those timings. If you're not going to pick them up, make sure you inform them who's going to pick them up, simply because you're wanting to address that lack of security that has been shaken up as a result of that trusted or loved one that is now missing from their lives as well. If the person who has died was ill, address any fears with your children about the illness. For example, that it wasn't a contagious illness, for example, and reassure them that you yourself as the adult, you're not unwell and you are healthy, and that you are there for them, and that you're not going to leave them as well. Anger can also be seen in children and can be quite a difficult emotion to deal with. So they're natural reactions to shocking and sad news, and accept that they are going to be natural reactions from children as well. And this is because children aren't able to manage their own feelings, and they might feel angry at the person that's died. They might feel angry at the family. They might feel angry at the other parent, that it's because of you that the other person died. Or they might just feel angry at the world in general. And this manifests in older children too. Never, ever react angrily with a child or a teenager that is angry. And it will help to tell them that you understand that they are angry. But as long as they don't hurt themselves or anyone else as well. Another good idea may be to develop a safe zone where this child or elder child can go and feel safe and calm down. It might be a quiet corner in the house, or it could be an area in the house that has familiar items that makes them feel safe. So make sure that you've got somewhere in the house that can be seen as a place of comfort for this child or individual. And sometimes with older teenagers, if they respond with anger, don't respond back. All they need is time. So try not to pursue them, especially if they want to be left alone. Check up on them after an hour or two. Give them time to recover and give them time to calm down as well. Sometimes I've seen a reaction in children who lose a loved one to become overtly protected towards their other parent and want to look after everything in the house. So they all of a sudden grow up. And I've seen this in a lot of young people. In fact, I will share with you that my husband lost my late father-in-law and his father at a very young age. And he always says that overnight he grew up into a man because he realized that he needed to look after things. And now I look back on that, and through my training in palliative care and loss and bereavement, that was a natural reaction, and it is part of a grief reaction actually, to take responsibility or assume responsibility to make sure that he's going to take care of everything, that child is going to take care of everything. But he was literally a teenager when his father passed away. So it's incredibly important to understand that when a teenager all of a sudden becomes mature, help them along the way as well. It is okay to take responsibility, but they should also know that not everything is their worry and that they shouldn't burden themselves. They should give themselves space to be able to recover and to grieve as well, because grief is a normal, accepted reaction. Now, some bereavement episodes can be so overwhelming and can bring huge changes into a life alongside all the other challenges that individuals go through or young people face as they grow up. A lot of young people just live in denial about it or deny the death or how strongly they feel. Some actually do feel, what's the point with school or social activities? Young people are more likely to be more impulsive and to take risks in an attempt to get back some control in their life. And for them, that situation that feels very out of control makes them feel in control when they act upon their impulse. And that's something that we should all be very wary of if you know a child that has suffered a bereavement as well. So what can help such children? What can you do to help? Give them honest and age-appropriate information about the circumstances surrounding death, and that they aren't alone, and that you're going to be here supporting each other through this process and through the journey as well. It is important that they should not blame themselves and that things are eventually going to fall into place and be okay. Try and keep your normal routines as much as possible and clearly demonstrate that the important adults in their life, and that there will always be a missing space for the person that they have lost, but the important adults are also there in their life and they're not going away, and that you're not going away as well. Always take out time to talk about what has happened and ask them to ask questions. It will make them feel lighter as well. And also give them time for them to grieve in their own way as well. So it is really important that we help children and that they get all the support that they need from those already around them and those that they know and trust. Never leave your children or your teenagers to be taken care of, those that you don't know as well, in the hope that they will get better and they will heal from it, because it will be much longer and it will be a much more challenging process as well. So this is the way you will have to talk about it to your children. And I don't want to miss out on those children who are on the autistic spectrum disorder and have special needs. It's really important that we talk about how they react to bereavement for children that are on the autistic spectrum disorder as well. So a child who's on the spectrum processes information much differently than those that aren't on the spectrum. And those that are on the autistic spectrum disorder have specific problems in developing their own ideas about death, and obviously the process and the events and the rituals that surround it as well. Now, always remember that a child that is on the autistic spectrum disorder will have something known as mind blindness. They're unable to see things from another's point of view, and it makes it hard for them to understand other people's feelings and behaviours, including and not realising that others can help. There's difficulties in understanding the ritual surrounding death and in understanding the implications of a death. For example, that because someone has died, that means they won't be there at the weekend or to take them to school or to celebrate a birthday as well. So that's really important too. Language is something that children on the autistic spectrum don't understand as well. So if a child is on the autistic spectrum and they have a loved one who is terminally ill and there's going to be an expected death, for them, the advice is to keep your routines as much as possible. Use clear, concise language and avoid flowering the whole subject as well. Don't decorate it. Talk to them how it is. Explain about any changes in advance, giving details of who will be doing what and when the death takes place. Use pictures and photographs to explain what will happen. So pictures of the hospice or the taxi that could be taking them to school or swimming from now on. Prepare them. Also, when the death has happened, use simple language to tell them that somebody has died. Use that word rather than saying that someone has lost or passed away or gone to sleep, because a child on the autistic spectrum needs to specifically know what has happened as well. So also explain what dead means. When someone is dead, their body is no longer working and their heart has stopped. And a dead body cannot move, it cannot feel anything, and there is no pain. It's very important that you explain that to a child on the autistic spectrum as well. That, again, when somebody dies, answer the child's questions as they arise. You don't need to prompt those questions as well. And answer simply and answer honestly and at the appropriate level for that child's age too. And prepare that child for any ceremonies, rituals, or deaths that will include them. If you can, visit the place beforehand, but often within the Muslim community, because burials take place so quickly, there is no time for preparing. So often in the aftermath, it is important to explain why a child is going to a mosque, why there are so many people, what happens thereafter as well. And also helping that child to learn how to recognize their different feelings and emotions in themselves and others too. But it doesn't matter whether a child is on the autistic spectrum or not. Building memories of an individual who has passed away is also equally as important too. Now, audio tapes of the voice of somebody as well can help with a child on the autistic spectrum to process that information. And similar or familiar scents that a dead person has used in the past, like a perfume that is familiar to that child, can sometimes be comforting and reassuring. And I know that this sounds strange, but often it can be used as a calming factor for a child who has lost a loved one and the child is on the autistic spectrum. So there's lots of things to think about from that perspective as well. So I'd really like us to process this information. There is so much to talk around bereavement and support, but there are some useful links. So Google SANDS, which is the organisation, child bereavement as well. Look at the Marie Curie website too. There is a cruise bereavement group as well. And there's a really good resource here that is particular to Peterborough and Cambridgeshire that is known as keepyourhead.com. And that is also a fabulous resource of how people can be supported during bereavement. If anything else fails, do contact your GP. Well, it was wonderful to be part of this show. I can't wait to see you next time. I am going to go away on a little break, but I will be back. And you can join me once again on the Body, Health and Mind Show on Salam Radio 106.